So today's webinar is all about helping you create professional images or detailed images for inspection work that will add value to your business and benefit your clients. Remember, if your clients are happy, they're more likely to promote you and your services. Referral and repeat business is where I get most of my work from. Hopefully all the tips and advice from today's masterclass will help you gain and retain more clients by producing better images or videos, or even more accurate and detailed data. There's even more to come in part 2 as well. So a little introduction what we're going to cover today. So what drone is right for you? We'll cover the pros and cons of both small, light drones and as well bigger professional drones, and guide you to the most suitable type for you. How to get the most out of the camera? There'll be lots of different cameras and different drones, but all of the tips I'll give you today are transferable between models and brands. Additional equipment, depending on what industry you're in and type of drone you're flying, you might need less, you might need more equipment. Ensuring you have the right equipment will allow you to be able to produce quality images or videos. Then what goes into taking a great photo? So we're going to be talking about composition, lighting, lots of things that will help your images stand out. Basics of editing. We'll also touch on different editing software and what's right for you, plus lots more. We're expecting this to be an hour and a half today. So if it does run over, you can shoot off. There will be a recording that you can watch the end of. So what will the outcome be? So knowledge, we're going to increase your knowledge, and that will help increase your skills, and then hopefully increase your business as well. So a little bit about me. My name's Jonny Sharp. I run Skydrone. I'm based just north of Newcastle upon Tyne. I've always been interested in all things remote control. So combining that and the love of landscape photography and flying drones, I knew this industry was perfect direction for me to go in. I've built my business from scratch, and my clients include large national home builders. I've worked on lots of different TV, short film projects, as well as adverts. I find what works for me is networking, getting to know other businesses and building solid relationships. As I mentioned, the majority of my work comes from referrals. My colleague Morgan will be joining us at the end of the session. He is a producer who I've collaborated on lots of projects with, and he's helped me gain important contacts within the industry, allowing me to grow my business. I'm frequently asked how I'm doing during COVID-19 and lockdown, and then is that affecting my business? Well, I am unable to take the PFCO courses that Coptrz run because of the social distancing. I am still able to film on other projects, meaning my presence is still felt in the industry. It has also allowed me to assess my business and identify areas of opportunity and investment, something I do frequently. I believe one of the reasons I've been successful is because I invest in myself, as well as you're doing now, and by joining us on part 2. The main thing is I'm passionate about what I do. So we're going to move on to part 1. Breakdown of this is going to be looking at drones, different markets, applications, cameras, different lenses, and other hardware and extra equipment you might need. So what is the right drone for you? I guess that depends on what you're going to be filming. Is it going to be high-end and TV, or the lower budget promotional work, or even inspection? I would say everyone has a budget they can spend on a drone, so that will dictate the category you will look at. Not everyone can afford the larger drones, but they can command more money for the shoots. But remember, equipment isn't everything. You have to be able to capture those creative images and videos You don't want to be the person with all the gear and no idea. So we'll first look at consumer, the smaller drones. These can be great for different situations. Indoor, tight, tricky shots. A lot of people normally start with the smaller consumer drones and then work their way up. They definitely have a place in the commercial business. I have a Mavic 2 Pro that I love, and it works for me and for my clients with the lower budgets. However, there are some cons that come with it. They can look cheap on a job. They're not as expandable. Some have lower wind resistance and smaller sensors, meaning less quality on the video output or photo output. So then we can look at professionals. An example here, you can see an Inspire 2 at the bottom. You are able to create the higher end production footage with this that will match the style, color profile of the bigger cinema cameras to ensure the footage looks seamless when outputted together. However, these drones have cons as well. They are more expensive. They can be less versatile sometimes and a lot harder to transport. So there are lots of different markets for drone footage, but for the purpose of this, I've picked out 3. So we're going to look at video, photography, and inspection. Video and photography is brilliant for advertising, especially social media, web-based advertising. It works well with properties. My biggest contracts with national home builders and construction companies. But remember, it's not limited to that. So go out and get creative. Here are some examples of what I've created over the time I've run my business. Then we've got other markets, which include video, TV, and events. You see more and more drone shots on TV programs and adverts nowadays, and they can really add value to the production. Also, more events are using drones to help showcase the scale of the event. They're just so versatile. Another market is inspections. People don't think you have to be able to take good photos for inspections. I say that you don't have to take pretty pictures for inspections, but you need to make sure they're technically a good photo. Ensuring the correct exposure will help the sharpness of the image and potentially color. Sometimes the exposure can actually mask defects, so could cause issues for your clients. So thinking about when you're going to inspect is important, as you don't want to go when there's lots of shadows. So try avoid sunny mornings and evenings where the shadows are going to be at the longest. Just a few examples here. Then we can move on to cameras. Some of these you might have seen before, that might look familiar. The Inspire 1 cameras at the top are the X3 and X5. The X3 is more like a GoPro, where it has a fixed lens. The X5 is more of a professional camera with interchangeable lenses and a large sensor to be able to capture more information and more light, increasing its capability in low light situations. Below is the Hasselblad Mavic 2 Pro, which is a fantastic camera for its size. Again, more like a GoPro style with a fixed lens. Then to the right is a Red camera. This is a cinema camera. This gives you a lot more adjustability with lens choices, follow focus, focus length when flying, all adjustable. So inside the cameras, you've got sensors. And on the screen here, you can see 4 different types, ranging from large to small. So what is a sensor? A sensor takes in the light, processes the light that is bounced off your subject to actually create an image. And how does the sensor affect the image? So a larger sensor will help provide higher resolutions, which means more megapixels, more detail, allowing potentially for bigger prints. Larger sensors also help with low light performance and increased dynamic range. So this is the range of tones that the camera can see and capture between pure white and pure black. And the wider range that is, the better. Another aspect to consider is crop factor, but we will cover this more in part 2 of the masterclass. DxOMark.com is a great website for you to compare most lenses and cameras against each other. Here you can see a small lineup of the DJI cameras, all scored in the same way. This illustrates what each is good for and an overall performance score, allowing you to make the right decision about the most appropriate camera for your work. Then inside the camera, we've got shutters. So there's 2 main types of shutter, one being global and the other being rolling. The benefits of global shutters are allowing you to have a higher frame rate, also increased resolution, very clear images even at a shorter exposure, helps with decreased noise even in low light performance or conditions, and then a broader dynamic range. Inspection people do prefer a global shutter as it freezes the image rather than potentially distorting it, as a rolling shutter can do, allowing you to keep moving while taking multiple shots or photos. A rolling shutter scans across the whole sensor, capturing the image like you can see at the bottom. This can help increase sensitivity to light, but also has a negative effect on accuracy on mapping missions when stitching the images, as the images can be distorted. Then we have lenses. There are 2 types of lenses, fixed and interchangeable. There are 3 main types of interchangeable lenses. We've got prime, telefocal, and wide. So let's have a quick look at them. You can see 2 examples, one on the right, a fixed lens. They are cheaper, lighter, more versatile, but then they can't be upgraded or changed that easily, and the quality isn't as good. And they also tend to have a higher aperture, which we'll talk about later. Interchangeable lenses tend to be better quality. There's lots of options and upgrades for them, and also have a lower aperture. They can be very expensive and heavier, and you might need lots of lenses to cover different types of shots. Then we can move on to prime lenses. They tend to be, well, they are a fixed focal length, so you have to carry lots of lenses around. They're very expensive because of the build quality. They do have a lower aperture, so allowing for a shallower depth of field and better performance in low light. Increased image quality. There's less glass inside that has to move, so less image distortion, and gives you a better bokeh. So you might have seen this on your phone cameras with the likes of portrait mode. The phone uses multiple lenses and artificial intelligence to create background blur to recreate the blur like a low aperture lens. They're able to focus faster than zoom lenses, but ultimately this makes you move around more and be more creative. Telefocal lenses, these have a wide focal range, giving you a greater flexibility and versatility than prime lenses. This means you can carry less lenses around. They do have a slightly higher or variable aperture, So typically not a constant aperture throughout the focal range. Therefore, they're not as good in low light situations. They are cheaper than prime lenses, but they are lesser image quality than them. And they can be a lot slower to focus than prime lenses. Moving on to the final lens choice is a wide angle lens. This helps create capture a lot of the subject or scenery. They tend to have a mixed aperture range, so it can be either variable or prime. They normally are cheaper than prime lenses, but can be distorted at the edges, giving a convex image. So not as good for the likes of mapping that have to be nice and precise. But they are very versatile, and these are typically used on a drone. So then what other equipment might you need? Out of the box, drones are great, but in certain light conditions, you might need extra equipment when it comes to saving the image or extra storage and tools to help edit it. So we'll first look at ND filters. If there's one bit of equipment I would say you should buy to get better photos, it would be a set of neutral density filters. There are different types. Some cover the whole lens, or be graduated to allow the sky that tends to be brighter to be exposed the same as the ground. This saves you time in editing as well. They work in the same way as putting sunglasses on to reduce the amount of light that gets your eye, or in this case, the sensor, allowing you to correctly expose on a bright day or increase the shutter speed to create long exposure images, which can make for dramatic photos. Or if you're filming, it allows you to keep your shutter speed at double your frame rate. Polarizing filters will reduce glare and reflections off the water or glass, giving a nice, cleaner image. It can also help with protecting the lenses from scratches and bumps. Good filters aren't cheap, but makes it cheaper than replacing the front glass of a lens. Next, moving on to SD cards. Ensuring you have a fast SD card is important. I say this is where all your money is stored, so make sure you're investing good memory cards and storage. SanDisk is what I normally use, normally the Extreme Pros. This allows me to film in 4K at the highest bitrate. I always have multiple cards on a shoot and switch them out regularly. This is just in case you might have a crash. Accidents can happen and do happen. So you want to make sure that footage is safe and secure. So make sure you back it up as soon as possible as well. Remember, footage is money. Best practice is to format the SD card in the drone to ensure that there aren't going to be any problems with saving the footage. Formatting on a different device might make the SD card incompatible to record onto. Standard SD card sizes range from 16 to 128 gig. While they do go higher, most drones only support up to 128 gigabytes. I don't like having too much footage on one card anyway. Ensuring you have a fast enough card to be able to film the file format that you need is important and very important to consider before starting a job. Moving on to a bit more of a long-term storage solution. There's two main types: SSD, solid state drive, or you might have heard of flash storage. This is faster, it's less moving parts, but can be very expensive. Then we have HDD, hard disk drive. These are your traditional spinning discs. They do last longer. They are slightly slower, but then they are cheaper. When I'm on site, I use an SSD that allows me to back up quickly. But when I return back to the office, I will back up to a HDD where I have no time constraints. Then we can look at computers. Once you've captured the footage, you need to be able to edit it, and efficiently. I have a few different options I can use. I have a 27-inch iMac that I do most of my day-to-day editing work on. I have a MacBook Pro for on-the-go work and editing, and then a desktop PC to run any programs that my Mac can't handle. This is all on a triple monitor display. This is ideal for my workflow, but it might not work for you. Some of the things that are important to look for when you're buying a Mac or a PC. So RAM, so that's random access memory. So this is for all the information, storing all the information for the programs that are currently running. I always try and put as much RAM into my setups as possible. This helps with processing speeds and also increase the lifespan of the machine. Then the processor, CPU, or the brains of the computer. Two main CPUs are Intel and AMD. So increasing the speed of them will help the speed of your machine. Storage, SSD or HDD, like we talked about in the last slide. Then screen resolutions and sizes. Try and go as large and as high quality as you can afford. This will help you in the long run. Operating systems. I mainly use an Apple system because it works well with all my other devices when transferring footage. However, it is personal preference and what works best for you. Finally, a lot of this comes down to price, but you do pay for what you get. PC is more bang for your buck. You do pay for the Apple logo, design, and quality, but in my experience, they do last longer than PCs. Next, we've got a little video about other things that aren't drones, so gimbals.
On a film set, every second counts. From large-scale studio shoots to tightly focused documentaries, efficiency is key. The original Ronin made great strides in helping make a shoot run smoothly. But we felt we could do even better. And we have, with the Ronin 2. We literally took the Ronin back to the drawing board with a few key factors in mind. Cross-compatibility with other stabilization systems, the capacity to fully power a RED camera, refined setup and balancing time, larger payloads for more ambitious camera configurations, and even intelligent features.
For the Ronin 2, we found it essential to make it so that it's able to be cross-compatible between mounted to a car for fast action driving, and it's now cable cam ready, and of course can still be handheld, providing smooth cinematic shots with minimal setup.
Everything has been refined for maximum efficiency. The Ronin 2 has been re-engineered from the ground up to be compatible with a wide variety of camera payloads. The carbon fiber build provides the highest quality manufacturing ever in a handheld stabilized camera rig. It makes the Ronin 2 lightweight, strong, and functional. The Ronin 2 is fully customizable thanks to extendable arms, which allow for larger camera bodies and lenses. Integrated locks on all 3 axes provide easier balancing, tuning, and transportation. And the new 2-axis lock means even greater options for mobility and camera control. With the new Ronin 2 grip, the entire setup can be safely and quickly set down with fold-away feet. New integrated adjustment knobs allow for quick, fine-tuning adjustments. The newly designed quick-release mount makes transferring from handheld to vehicle mounts a breeze. and faster setups means less downtime on a shoot. Powerful, higher torque motors provide the capability for larger payloads without sacrificing speed.
What was nice is that the system is that the motors are so strong that we had it in 3 different types of environment, and the system never needed to be retuned. It just sort of transferred between all 3 environments seamlessly, and it kept the stabilization rock solid.
The Ronin 2 can move at speeds up to 75 miles per hour with a maximum 30-pound payload, all while resisting high winds.
With Ronin 2's ability to travel at upwards 70 miles an hour, it allows us to do something that we weren't able to do previously, and as easily as we can do it with the Ronin 2. It gives us the ability to chase what we're doing at the speed at which it's happening at, which is exactly what we need to do.
To facilitate these new powerful features, the Ronin 2 is powered by dual batteries, which are hot swappable at a moment's notice, allowing for continuous uptime without ever powering down. The camera can also be powered directly by the Ronin 2's batteries, providing a more seamless experience between it, the camera, and all other accessories.
When you need to do a battery change, the camera stays live, the Ronin stays live, and you're just hot swapping. And then you keep on going. With the advent of something like the Ronin, I can provide the kind of gentle movement, the incredible sense you get in being outside.
A new integrated ultra-bright screen allows for on-the-fly software and settings adjustments directly from the Ronin 2, including intelligent features. You can even make adjustments to a red camera right from the touchscreen. Also, a new handheld controller has been designed for wireless remote control of the gimbal. The Gimbal Assistant app has been completely overhauled, making it more intuitive and allowing full control of the Ronin 2. A new built-in GPS module allows for better performance during high-speed shooting. Smooth Track has been updated for even better performance. And intelligent features like time-lapse and panorama are fully supported. Every element of the Ronin 2 has been redesigned with the filmmaker in mind to maximize reliability and efficiency in any film environment. By removing hardware and technical challenges from a film set, the Ronin 2 is ready to help any filmmaker fully realize their creative vision. Storytelling is a medium that endures. The flexibility and power of the Ronin 2 ensures that every filmmaker's legacy is preserved forever.
So yeah, really try and branch out. I see obviously the video might have not worked for everyone there, so I do apologize for that. There are a lot of different other brands, gimbals out there to use. This is just some of the equipment I use. Yeah, I don't have a June buggy yet as well, but they are very good. If permissions might not be granted, there might be too many trees. Certain times drones aren't the right thing to use. Then in the recent years, FPV action cameras are coming into their own to be able to offer FPV cinematography. It's fast-paced and dynamic. Gives that viewer a real roller coaster to view of the action. There are analog digital versions. I use the digital FPV versions, and they are fantastic. What I would say is go and look at YouTube for all the other amazing drone racing, drone freestyle pilots out there. You won't be disappointed. We'll have a bit of a recap on what we've gone through on part 1. So firstly, we covered what drone is right for you. Is that consumer or professional? There are lots of different brands out there, so go and explore the different types. Then what types of camera are available? That was including sensor sizes, different types of shutter, so depending on what industry and what you're trying to film. What type of lenses are there? What will suit your project the best? Finally, other hardware, what will you potentially need? Filters, SD cards, storage, computers. Make sure you find out what you need and then work to that. The right setup will help you grow your business or potentially help take better photos. If you have any other questions, please ask them in the question function at the bottom of the screen. We will be taking a quick 5-minute break here and then come back and I'll answer some questions. Welcome back. Hope everyone's refreshed. I see some people have put some questions into the question section. There's one from Simon. Says he's already in the he's already got video production as a background, but he struggles with 3D mapping and surveying. Yeah, it is a very different type of industry and what you need to be able to achieve. Coptrz do run Pix4D mapping. That's not the only mapping software out there. And what I would suggest is try and go out to a field or wherever, somewhere you can test it out, work through all the different applications. Sometimes I actually outsource my work to other companies just because I'm sometimes too busy, or it might be something outside my drone spec that I need to get. So that's always a good option. Another one from Andrew. So what would you suggest for a good all-round setup? Starting out, trying to not spend loads of money, I would say a Mavic 2 Pro. There will be new ones coming out soon, potentially, but that is a very, very good bit of kit. And for the price, it's good as well. For me, I like the smart controller for that. It just makes you look a little bit more professional when you do turn up to a job, instead of having to put your phone into the controller. Some of the other questions are going to be answered later on in the slides, but also there's too much information for me to pass on today. And so that's being moved to part 2 of the course on the 16th of June. So we're going to go through second part of this course, part 2. We will have, this is another little short part of the section. Then we'll have again another short 5-minute break, and then finish off with part 3. So what we're going to learn in part 2. So how light works with the camera sensor and what controls the exposure. Auto versus manual exposure and the benefits of having control over the image exposure. ISO, shutter speed and aperture, and how 3 all affect the exposure. Then white balance, how this affects the look of the image. And depth of field. So what does this mean, and what factors affects the size and the focus range? So how does the light affect the sensor? The light comes from the sun, bounces off the subject matter, then it will pass through the lens. After that, it passes through the aperture, then the shutter speed will dictate how much light is exposed to the sensor. Next, we're going to talk about the 3 things that affect exposure. They are ISO. So this is how sensitive the light reacts to the sensor, or the sensor reacts to the light, sorry. Then we have the aperture. This regulates how much light is exposed to the shutter. Then we have shutter speed. This is how much time the sensor is exposed to the light. So what's the benefit versus auto versus manual? Auto can ensure or allow the camera to choose the exposure from the information collected from the scene. This is great for quick shots that you need to get fast, but potentially doesn't give you the best image quality. It can push the ISO up if it's dark and cause a lot of grain in the image, or open up the aperture to its max and cause soft images. Manual exposure allows you to keep inside the best operating limits of your camera and lenses, and gives you just more control over the exposure. There are shutters, or the shutter or aperture priority modes that keep the set value you choose, then automatically changes the other 2 factors. Moving on to aperture. So this is the opening in a lens through which the light passes to enter the camera. It's expressed in f-stops or focal ratio. The lower the number, the wider the opening, letting more light in. A lower f-stop means a shallower depth of field, causing the background or foreground to be more blurry. The higher the f-stop, the smaller the opening is, so less light, letting less light in. A higher f-stop means a deeper depth of field, causing the background or foreground to be more in focus. Next, we've got an example of this. So it starts at f1.4. The background is very blurry, so it has a shallow depth of field, going all the way up to f22, which causes the background to be more in focus. One thing to note, aperture isn't the only thing that can affect the depth of field. Sensor size and focal range can affect it too. Moving on to shutter speed. So this is how long the sensor is exposed to the light. This plays a large part in exposure. A shorter shutter speed will cause underexposure of the image, while a longer one will cause the image to be overexposed. It can also have effect on the sharpness of the image. So ensure the camera is on a tripod or very still if the shutter speed is slow to avoid any camera shake or blur. Or if you are shooting fast-moving subjects, you will need to have a fast shutter speed to freeze the subject. A long shutter speed will cause a moving subject to blur more as well. Long exposure can create a dramatic effect, but you need to regulate the amount of light hitting the sensor with equipment like we talked about, the ND filters. So this is a slightly different image take on long exposure. In this case, it uses long exposure and a dark ND filter to allow the shutter speed, a longer shutter speed during the day when it's bright. So not to overexpose the image. The drone then matches the speed of the car and then focuses on that. Then the shot is taken. With all of that, the ground then blurs out. These can create really cool images, and you can get really creative with them. The third one is ISO. So this is the sensitivity of the sensor. Its normal range from ISO 100, so less sensitive, all the way up to 3200 on auto or 12,800 on manual. But these are increasing with the cameras coming into the market year on year. The larger the ISO, the more grain or noise is added to the photo, causing quality loss. It is sometimes necessary to shoot with a higher ISO and reduce some noise in post-processing. In a nutshell, high ISO allows you to shoot at a faster shutter speed, smaller apertures, or in darker conditions. This will result in increased noise and general loss of sharpness and detail, but will help the image to be brighter as well. Then white balance. So this allows you to give the image a realistic color. You can either choose to change between it in camera or in post-production. I tend just to keep it in auto white balance, so it reacts to the different situations. But you can change it from sunny, cloudy, different types of light bulbs, and also all of this will affect the color temperature of the image. It's measured in a Kelvin's unit, normally seen as a K, ranging between 2,500 K to 10,000 K. You might have seen this when you're buying light bulbs as well. The lower the number means the warmer the image, and the higher the number, the cooler the image. So drones tend to use wide-angle lenses that don't have as shallow a depth of field, helping the image to be more in focus. But for example, using a 45mm lens on an X5S, an Inspire 2, which is equivalent to a 90mm lens when you factor in crop factor, this will give a nice compression and a narrower depth of field. So you can see on the slide now, this is one of my images shot in Iceland. This was shot at 200mm f4, ISO 100. You can see how blurred the foreground is. This is because of the long focal length, the fairly low aperture, and was shot on a full frame sensor. All of this contributes on a narrower or shallower depth of field. So autofocus or manual focus. Autofocus selects an area of the image quickly and focuses on that point. Manual does allow you to dial in that focus a lot more. It does require a lot more skill, but it is the best way to work most of the time. But I would say go out and test it before you put it into practice. It needs lots of practice. Something to help you with that is focus peaking, and I would say this is essential. So this highlights the part of the image that's in focus with a color, in this case red. The thresholds can be changed as well as the color. This will not show on the final image or footage. It just helps you dial in the focus when using manual mode, or check that your autofocus is working. Just a quick little section there. So what have we gone over? So how light reacts with the camera sensor. So that's auto versus manual exposure. Auto is great for quick shots, but manual does give you a lot more control over the image. Then the three things that do affect exposure: ISO, shutter speed, and aperture. Then we looked at white balance. So that's creating a natural colored image by adding either warm or cool tones. Then focus and focus peaking. Auto is fast, less accurate, but while manual allows you to dial in a lot more, but it is harder to master. Then depth of field, what affects it. We're going to have another little short break, so go and grab a drink and we'll meet back in 5 minutes. As well, you can ask any questions in this time and I'll read through them and see if I can answer as many as I can. So welcome back. I hope you're all refreshed. With regard to some of the questions that come through, I'm just going to go through a few of them. So CJ asked, so what does the term shutter speed actually mean? So the shutter speed covers the actual sensor. So this stops the light hitting the actual sensor. So shutter speed is just how long that shutter is open to the light, opening up to allow the light to hit the sensor. And Colin underneath that, do you recommend or even operate as a team? I do, yeah. Depending on the job, the budget, this all depends on it. But yeah, if you are looking to produce bigger and better work, I would start working with other people as a team. But the budget obviously has to be there. Some people network, and if they want experience, they'll come along and help you. Sometimes that's a great way of working around that. Are you familiar with the Alto Evo 2? I'm not. I don't have any experience on that. I have heard it is very, very good with the quality camera on there. So best thing to do is watch some YouTube videos. I know there are a few operators around the UK with them. Am I covering any D-Log or D-Cine-like? Unfortunately, I don't have the time in this webinar to cover everything. That will come in part 2. Any others? Somebody's asking about insurance here. For me, I use CoverDrone. It works for me. It's not the cheapest. There's Moonrock. There's lots of different good companies out there. For me, I have a yearly insurance package. Some do pay per flight, and that works better for those people. So Flock, lots of companies now do that pay per flight insurance. Okay, moving on to the next part, the last part, part 3. We're going to be talking about typical photo and video modes that you might see. For these, they are going to be just in the DJI Go app. There are lots of different drones, different cameras out there. So you might have some of these settings, you might have more settings. So it really just depends on what you are using. Things like spot metering, zebra and histogram, how these can help you expose to the correctly expose your image. Then frame rates, file formats, and then look into what types of post-production software there is. Shown are some typical photo modes you will see on the DJI equipment. Some things are very useful, some things are not so. Really just depends on your style and the industry you're in. You can find all of these in the settings tab as well. So first is single shot. This is the most common way to take a picture. In this mode, when you hit the shoot or record button, it will take a single image. So this will be an image aspect ratio of either 4:3, 3:2, 16:9. So these can all be changed depending on what camera you're using. But all drones do have a native ratio depending on their sensor sizes. So in the correct aspect ratio, this will utilize the whole sensor. So if you're shooting on a Mavic 2, say, that's a 3:2 ratio. Next, AB mode, or auto exposure bracketing mode. This allows you to take multiple shots with the push of one button. There will be all at different exposures, making sure you collect as much information in the highlights and the lowlights. You can then use editing software to stitch them together in post-production. These can produce dramatic HDR effect photography, so high dynamic range photography. But used with caution, as creating too much HDR effect can start looking bad or give a negative effect to the photograph. Now you do have HDR mode, which is similar to the AEB. It will take several bracketed photos and capture all the detail in the subject. But unlike AEB mode, it would automatically pull the best parts from each frame and merge them together to produce the final HDR high dynamic range image. It's a good option when you don't want to merge them manually. A lot of photo modes only output in JPEG and will give you less to work with if you want to edit them in post-production. Try shooting in manual and then stitch the photos together. This will give you the most flexibility and quality. Then we have multiple burst modes for capturing moving subjects. So you can set it up to take as little as 3 up to 7 images at the press of one button. You then can just choose the best frame to use from the sequence. Remember, if you want to photograph fast moving images or subjects, you want fast shutter speed and potentially to increase your ISO to help eliminate any blur. After that, we can look at time shots. So one thing time shots are good for a time lapse or hyperlapse, but there are now modes out there that do cover time and hyperlapse. Another useful thing is for mapping missions that I use it for. By setting the camera to take a photo every 2 seconds, you could then set the drone on a point of interest and circle around this, collecting images to add to your 3D model potentially. It is a very good tool to use. Then we've got pano mode. So panoramic photography can be really impressive, especially with large landscape features. Here are 3 examples of the same subject using different modes from different angles. The top image is a 180-degree photo. This is made up of 21 photos, giving a long, thin image. The bottom left is a 360 sphere photo. This is made up of 34 images. Then it's been edited to give a little big planet effect feel. Then right of that is a vertical pano where it's 3 photos stitched vertically together. Once again, like the other modes, they do output in JPEG and are edited in drone, but can be set to save as individual RAW or JPEG files, so then you can edit them later on for a bigger and better quality. One of the final photo modes is hyperlapse. This takes multiple photos at different exposures, similar to the HDR, and then compares the noise in the photo and removes any of the noise or grain, and then blends the photo together. This is great for low light photography, and it's a game changer really. After photo modes, we've got video modes. They can take the stress out of filming, allowing your drone to follow a subject, set waypoint pattern, giving you more time to focus on getting the shot. One is point of interest. This gives you smooth movement around an object with the ability to adjust the direction, speed, and height. On my Inspire 2, I use Spotlight Pro if I don't have another camera operator there. Technology has come a long way. By selecting a subject in the scene, the camera will lock onto that, allowing you to fly in any direction and still have that subject in the center of the frame. Cinematic mode on my Mavic 2 is great. This gives you the stability of GPS, but the smoothness of ATI mode Finally, tripod mode is another one I use a lot. This reduces the stick inputs and the speed of the drone to give you nice, smooth, precise shots in potentially tight locations. There are many more, but these are the ones I mainly use. Here's a video of some of the features of the Mavic 2 Zoom. So dolly zoom's a feature on the Mavic 2. This is where the aircraft flies backwards away from the subject. It uses the optical zoom to increase that focal length, giving a nice depth perspective and compression to the video. To get the effect to work the best, you need a subject that's close to you and a background that's far away. There is other ways of achieving this if you don't have a zoom lens. You can film in 4K while flying backwards, then in post use an effect called Ken Burns tool. This effectively creates the same effect by punching into the image. You might have to output in 1080p or higher because you've cropped into the image and it won't be as good a quality. It does give a fairly similar output, but you don't get that compression like you do with a zoom lens. So now we're going to have a look at what goes into making great photos and videos. There's lots of different factors, main ones including composition, subject, lighting, exposure. And we're going to have a look at this image and see what we can see in this. So when composing an image, there's a few things to think about. Rule of thirds, I would say, is the most essential technique. This is where you mentally or on screen sometimes you have it divided using 2 horizontal lines and 2 vertical lines. You then position the most important elements of the scene along those lines or on the points where they meet. Shadows. While there's no real shadows in this photo, there is a sense of shadows from the sea defense wall under the water. Leading lines, so trying to draw your eye in or potentially away from the subject, and I've used the sea wall to do that. Subject or location, this can make a massive effect to the image. For here, it's fairly simple subject, but because of the location, it makes it quite interesting. You can also look at symmetry, try to duplicate the image. For this, I've tried to duplicate the water on both sides. Patterns, no real such patterns in this photograph. You could look at the sea defense wall, you might see a little bit of pattern in there. Height, I haven't gone too high, or I would have lost the subject and wouldn't have got the same impact from the image. But remember, simplify, less can be more. And you don't have to have all of these in an image, but when you start looking at the images, you normally pick out quite a few of them. But the main thing is, go out and take photos and videos. Get up early, especially this time of the year, or even on an evening. These can reward you with some great colors and skies. Next, we're going to have a look at some tools built into your camera that can help you produce better quality photos and videos relating to exposure. So with spot metering, the camera will only measure that small area of the scene where you select. High contrast scenes are where the metering modes is most commonly used. The important thing to know here is that the spot metering doesn't take into account the rest of the frame, just that point you've selected. This is sometimes used if you want, this is something you want to use where the subject is the most important part of the scene. In most cases, spot metering will over or underexpose part of the scene, as you can see on this GIF. Another great tool to use is Zebra. So the Zebra pattern will warn you if the image or part of the image is completely overexposed. The Zebra pattern ensures you don't lose data or detail that can't be recovered back into the image. If you do see them, you can potentially reduce the shutter speed, decrease the ISO sensitivity, make the aperture smaller, or even add an ND filter. All of this will help bring some of the detail back into the sky, but it can be hard when shooting on bright days with little color or cloud in the sky. Then we can move on to histograms. You can see the camera's histogram on the screen. So what it shows is a graph of the tonal range in an image. In other words, it shows you how much of the scene will recorded as a shadow, how much as a highlight, and how much in between. Ensuring the majority of the pixels are in the middle of the graph will mean you have to have the correct exposure for the image. So then we can move on to image formats. There's two main image formats for the industry, one being JPEG and the other being RAW. I personally shoot in RAW when I can, but also set the device up to take JPEGs on the same image. I use this for preview purposes, so I can choose the best shot, then edit the RAW version, as the file sizes can range between 25 to 90 megabytes, depending on what camera I'm using, and can take a longer time to open when I just want to view it quickly. JPEGs are popular format, and the most devices can open them, but they can degrade easily when compressed. RAW is a much higher file size, but captures lots more information in the highlights and the lowlights in the image, so you can manipulate them more in post-production. Clients will usually specify what format they want the files in, but be sure to double check what they want. Then we can look at megapixels. So how many megapixels do you need? Having too many megapixels on a small lens can actually be a bad thing. That's why you haven't seen a massive jump in megapixels in phone cameras. But technically, the more megapixels, the better the image quality will be. This will allow you to crop into the image more to be able to create larger prints as well. The larger the sensor, the better it can absorb light as well. So it's going to have better low light capabilities. Lenses can also play a big role in sharpness and quality in the final image. So ensuring you purchase good and high quality lenses to make the most out of the sensor's megapixels is important. Then we can look at video formats. MOV, MP4s are the main video formats that you'll see. MOV files can be high quality and can be easily converted into MP4s if necessary. MP4s are also very good quality. They tend to be the industry standard, but sometimes are prone to corruption. Again, like the image formats, make sure you know what your client needs to avoid any issues. When it comes to filming as well, we have FPS. So you might have seen this in your camera settings. In simple terms, this is how many images are shot in 1 second to create a video. So if you shoot in 60 frames per second, there would be 60 photos making up that 1 second of footage. The more footage, the higher the FPS. So the more the FPS, the smoother footage, and higher. 60 FPS can be used, so anything above 60 FPS can be used for slow-mo footage. So what should you be filming? UK standards for FPS is 25, so filming in multiples of 25 will keep it consistent when adding into other footage. But again, just make sure you know what your client needs. Film projectors keep to 24 frames per second, as this is where your eye stops seeing any jerkiness and gives a natural motion blur to the video. Increasing frames per second will increase file size and export times. So here there's a quick example. You can see the different speeds and the different frame rates. So the higher the frames per second, the smoother the footage is going to be. Moving on to software. So I know a lot of people asked about software. We don't have enough time to go through every single different software. This is going to be covered in part 2. So we'll look at image editing first. From the start, I've always used Photoshop to manipulate and edit images. It is a great program. I still don't know everything on it because it changes, evolves every year. I do use Lightroom as well, if it's more for batch and just more exposure editing. But there are lots of cheaper and even free softwares out there that are great to use. So if you're looking at Photoshop, rough prices, £20 a month. For Lightroom, around £10. Capture One, £10 to £20. And then Affinity, £25 to £50. And that's for the full program. But like I said, a lot of them do have free trials. So go out and try them, see what works best for you. Photoshop gives you a lot of different tools to use, some of them being the burn tool. That lets you darken specific areas of an image. You've got clone tools that let you edit any imperfections out. Dodge tools, that allows you to lighten up specific points of the image as well. Moving on to video editing. Like Photoshop, Premiere Pro is an industry standard, but again, it can be quite tricky to master. It's great if you're working on a project with someone else. You can send it very easily. I use Final Cut Pro as well. It's fairly easy to pick up, but the only bad thing is it's only available on Mac. DaVinci Resolve is well known for its color grading as well, so go out and try all these different programs. Premiere Pro, you're looking around £20 a month. Final Cut Pro 10, that's around £240 for the whole program. iMovie is free, but again, that's just on a Mac. And then DaVinci Resolve is around £270 for the whole program. So it's weighing up, do you want to be paying monthly or outright for these programs? So here's some tools that you can use in Final Cut, but a lot of these are in all the other programs as well. So you've got your Ken Burns, that allows you to crop or punch into an image. Speeds, that's allowing you to just alter the speed of the footage. Transitions allow you to add different effects when cutting to a different scene. Then color grading. So this is a process of improving the appearance of an image. So various attributes of an image are contrast, color, saturation, detail, black level, white point. And all of these can be edited to produce the final color grade. Then going back to transitions. Transitions are joining of a clip from one another. These can be used as an instant scene or an image change, a fade to black, dissolve. There are lots of different effects to choose from. So it really just depends on your project. And like transitions, these can change from project to project. So you can see here, you have a 50s TV style theme video effect. It might not be right for every project or any project, but there is lots of them to choose from. I would say if you want to learn lots of tips and tutorials, YouTube or lynda.com is they're great. We will also be covering editing in part 2 as well. So finally, how to stand out and sell your service. Image is everything and first impressions count, so making sure you look professional is important. There are a lot of things you can do to help. Branded workwear, car signage, good websites, equipment, and making sure it's kept in good condition as well. And of course, amazing looking photos and videos, or detailed photos and videos. Alongside that is your work. If you haven't already, get a show reel made up and hosted on your websites, social platforms, so prospective businesses can see what you're capable of. Social media and brand companies can offer free or paid workshops on how to gain more followers, how to build a brand, how to help to bring more work in from that social media side, as it's so big these days. Go to other companies that already have aerial works and see if you can offer them better. It might get you a foot in the door. The million-dollar question is, when I do take the PFCO courses, is how much do I charge? And there's many factors that do affect that. But for the best information, I would look to book on one of the business courses that Coptrz do run. But also in part 2, we will be covering know your worth, how to price for different industries as well. So a bit of a recap. What have we learned? So typical interfaces, photo and video modes, spot metering, zebra and histograms, so how these can help get the correct exposure, different frame rates and file formats, post-production software, and what is the right one to use. All of this and more, and what we've talked about in the last slides will be talked about in more depth as well on part 2. I've mentioned my colleague Morgan during this session. I have worked with Morgan on various projects, and his skill sets complement the work I already do. Morgan will be joining us on part 2 to build on knowledge of today and his expertise in the industry. We'll also take a look in more depth into some of the subjects like I mentioned that we've covered today. Post-production, software demonstrations, then have a look in the world into the world of corporate and commercial, as well as the pros and cons of working in TV and film. After that, we'll speak about pricing and pitching and what to expect when stepping into the different industries. I was hoping to have Morgan onto this call today. Unfortunately, technology has gone wrong, but I'll move on to telling you a little bit more about him and what he's going to bring to part 2. So Morgan has over 18 years experience in corporate, commercial, and drama production. He did start in TV and documentaries, making films. The main thing he does now is produces film and TV dramas. He has multiple different companies. He still does that commercial side, but has a real passion for the filmmaking and has won many different awards for that. He is so knowledgeable about the industry and will be able to teach you a lot and how to work your way into that industry, because it can be quite tight-knit. So thank you for attending part 1 of Coptrz Introduction to Photography Masterclass. We hope to see you on part 2. That's on the 16th of June. All information can be found on the offer tab below. Part 2 will be more hands-on. So we have capped the amount to 25. So we can give a more detailed bespoke course to the people who attend. We will be putting more dates on once this is sold out. Thank you for your time today, and we hope you enjoyed it. I will stay on for a bit and try and answer any questions in the chat that you might have, but hopefully we'll see you in part 2. So thank you.